What's going on, legend? Well, welcome back to Beyond the 90. You've probably seen the thumbnail. You've probably seen the offside. There isn't really much that I can add to that that's not been covered before. Long story short, crap from the officials. Absolute rubbish. But let's move on to the other parts because I don't think that explains the full story. Um, Overall, I'll give you my thoughts, but I'll get into some of the specifics. So let's just start from the beginning. What was the starting lineup? You probably already saw this. There was a couple of shocks even then. There was mentions of the likes of Monga coming into the team. Evans, they didn't even come up. We're going to mention those hopefully in a little bit more detail later on. But the team kind of was a half-half of players that have played before, a team that would play in the Premier League, and a team that is kind of second string. I'll give you an example of that. So Hermansen, not going to mention him too much. Called upon, he was okay. He didn't really he didn't do anything wrong. Didn't have to make off some blinding saves, but he came and did what he needed to do. So for this, I'm just going to cut him out. Had a decent enough game. Then let's go to the back line. Obviously, you got Thomas coming in. Christensen wasn't even on the bench. Maybe he was injured. Maybe he was staying at home ahead of the next game. There was two players that three players that I didn't even see make the bench. Jamie Vardy, Christensen, and obviously another one, Edouard, who we're not even going to speak about because anyway, he's not even that's another rant in itself, isn't it, with the whole Edouard situation. Looking at that back line, I was thinking, oh dear, no Koulibaly. This would have been a brilliant opportunity to play them. Man United are weak. They're not playing good football. They're losing at home. They're weaker than their away record. This would be a good opportunity to try Koulibaly and see what we're going to do. Instead, he plays Thomas ahead of him. And also, I thought he was going to come place in Justin. Now, so we'll get into the Justin situation later, but the back line, we'll get into it. So, back line in general, we'll come on to a little bit later. The midfield duo was actually something different. Before we saw Winks and Samore play a bit of a difference. We're actually seeing Diddy, who was actually fit, ready, come back into that lineup. We had El Canous, who again is just it's so good, man. Ayu I'll come on to, and D could have read. What was interesting, he swapped them. In the previous games, he's played Ayu on the right and D could have read on the left, and he played Patson Daka up top. So again, a little bit of a hybrid of like half the team that he would normally play and half the team but half the team is going to start against Arsenal in the next game. Half of the team isn't. So if we go to have a look at some of these, so we've got some specific players to mention here. I was surprised the fact that Koulibaly wasn't starting. I'm not surprised they dropped Jamie Vardy, given time to rest. Christensen was an interesting one. And we'll get into some of the specific players, but I thought when looking at this, I wasn't too bothered. It didn't give me too much confidence. And I'm glad that there was a lot of people that boycotted the game and that saying it's too expensive on a Friday night to go down to Manchester, which I totally agree. So I totally understand that. We'll come on to some of the specifics, but some players want to mention in the beginning first half because we were on top for that game. Let's be honest. In the first half, we really were on top. Let's be honest, both sides were poor. Over that game, over the full 90 minutes, I'd say both teams were pretty unhappy. If I was watching that as a neutral, I probably would have turned off because I was like, the ball was kind of jetting around. We did have some possession and it never really amounted to anything. Did we have a load of possession? Did we defend pretty well? I think we defended better. We didn't really attack, and we'll get into some of that in specifics, but there were some moments where, well, let's take it about one of the players, Luke Thomas, as an example. Left back, I think he dealt with Dorgu really well. I quite like Dorgu as a player. Looking at him, he's he's aggressive, he's young. He's going to come up and down. You can see why he's brought into that Amorim team and for Man United. I think Luke Thomas dealt with him pretty well in the game. Considering that this guy isn't top quality, we've seen him absolutely struggle against like a League One and League Two opposition. I think he did well in the game, and credit to him. I know he came off after about 60 odd minutes, and we'll get onto them in a second. I think he did well. Walt Fast, I'm not going to speak on too much. Walt Fast did Walt Fast. Didn't do anything horrific, which is a good sign, but he didn't do anything amazing. I think he could get a good pairing with Caleb Okoli. who I was super impressed with in the game. That's who we need. That's going to keep us up. I'm sorry, Vestergaard, you need to rest. There's another player that's not actually on the bench as well. Vestergaard, I'm sorry, I think your time is done. Too many mistakes. And Caleb Okoli, what I loved about him, I loved his celebrations after that goal line clearance. It reminded me a little bit of when I first watched it. I was like, oh, it's going in. And then I watched Caleb Okoli do that, the goal line save. If I imagine you've watched the highlights and you're coming into here. And I went, wow. But also not just the save, the celebration. I think it was Koulibaly afterwards giving it the big and giving it the hug. And I love that. I love the passion that he's got. Yes, I'm celebrating it almost like a goal. Because that was going in. I thought he was solid throughout the game. And I think he could form a good partnership with Wout Fast. The problem is with Fast is that we all know he's got not just one mistake in him, two mistakes in him, or an absolute clanger in his game. Caleb Okoli kind of comes and picks up, and we saw a little bit of that when he first started the games. I think Vestergaard wasn't fit, Cody wasn't being mentioned, so he was put into the team. And if we're going to have a chance staying up, that's going to be the player, in my opinion, that could really help us. Is he new? Yes. Does he have experience? Not really, but there's something there, and if we could tweak that and develop that into a better player, maybe that is the centre back we need. I still think we need a centre back in the January window of a really good level that would have just gone. Not off of Fafana, but you see what I mean. A player that can come in, establish himself, an El Canoes, but centre back, establish himself, confident, can take the ball, play a little bit, and then play it where he needs to. I don't think his passing and everything's there, but at the moment we just need the basics, and he does the basics well. I think when Fast was running up and Fast again loses the ball, which I don't think he did any calamities, but it's what Fast, isn't it? Goalie was there to mop up, and I think he started to form those relationships with other people around him. I think he worked well with him being left-footed. I think he worked well with Thomas. I think he worked well with Koulibaly. We'll come on to in a second as well. And under the cosh, he looked comfortable. And I think this team is. There are elements of when the team give a little bit, when they start to push, we kind of don't know how to deal with it. And he seemed like he dealt with it a lot. James Justin coming on to right back. He had. I'm so frustrated with Justin, man, because he did so well in the game. And there was one substitution that made massive difference. I thought Koulibaly was actually going to come on for James Justin, but it wasn't. One of the players that actually came on was for that side. Justin came off, and then Koulibaly went to left back. Koulibaly can play left or right back, but we'll get on to Justin a little bit later with Garnacho coming on because that made a world of a difference. And JJ was pretty much hung out to dry. Up to that point of the first 45 minutes, I thought JJ looked decent. But we need to have a 90-minute performance, and people need to adapt in terms of that. So it's first time Wilfred Ndidi's come back into the team as well. Wilfred Ndidi was just a great firefighter, and I loved him and Samori as a duo. I think they're both kind of similar in a sense, but they're both very different. I think when you bring on Winks, who, can I be honest, it's been poor since he's come into the back into Premier League. I think there was one game that I could think about Southampton where we played 3-2 where I was like, yeah, that was a great performance. Other than that, it just defensively, there's just not enough there, and he just looks a little bit lackadaisical, and I didn't enjoy his performance that much. But anyway, coming back to Ndidi and Samore, both of them working together, I think works quite well. And that's going to be the centre midfield duo that's going to keep us up. If we are if Wilfred Ndidi drops, Samori will then go. I think Samori's got a lovely way of giving the ball and then just like breaking into space, either left or right, or finding some particular space. Ndidi is just there to firefight, to get the ball, and then turn it over. But I think it's a brilliant job of defending that back line. And there's no surprise that when Ndidi came off, the opposition, Man United, started to get back into the game. But yeah, we take our goal well. And speaking of Wilfred Ndidi, brilliant work by El Canoes to get this lovely space, cut off literally 80% of that back line, gives it over to Ndidi, who has time and space, hits it in a typical Ndidi way. He's not a cam. He's a high 8 in the championship, but the level between the championship and the Premier League is so vast that you're seeing like Wilfred Ndidi just can't get that levels at the moment. Then it comes off the goalkeeper, and Onana parries it straight into the likes of Deco Reed, who nods it home. Now, I quite like Deco Reed. I've said this before. I think he's a good player in there. Popping up in the good positions, you can't take your chance if you're not there. In my opinion, that should have been Pat Sandaka that's getting in those positions, which we'll come on to in a bit. But Deco Reed, I think that had a decent enough performance today. El Canoes just continues to impress, doesn't he? He's got such a swagger, such an arrogance, such a give it to me, I'll figure it out, and I'll take this team out of trouble. And I loved how it reminds me in a sense of, remember when Madison used to play for us and he would just get the ball, give it me, I want it. I want to bring people into the game. I want to make sure that we're coming around. And I really enjoyed that. But El Canoes is, again, developing into a position. And up to that point, in looking at the first half, I was like, it was poor. As in, like, both teams were pretty rubbish, pretty average. And this is a terrible Man United side. Up to that point, and then we get the 1-0, we're thinking, okay, this is going quite well. We didn't create a lot of opportunities, and the goal kind of summed it up where, yeah, somebody kind of taps it in. There wasn't really any like major opportunities. We didn't really create a lot of opportunities. We didn't concede a lot of opportunities. I think that Man United were just that bad as well. Coming into half time, a substitution that makes all the difference was Garnacho. He was subbed off for Dorgu after 46 minutes, which I was surprised at. But again, something needs to change because that Man United was so poor. And they mentioned it in commentary when I was watching the game. I actually thought the game was today. I didn't even realize it was a Friday. I've just been disassociating myself with football. So 2 substitutions came on. So Garnacho came on for Dorgu, which means that, again, the opposite player, I can't remember who he was, not Hoyland. In terms of this, Mainu moved over to the right-hand side. So Diallo moved over. And sorry, Garnacho with straight swap here for Dorgu. I can't remember who they started to really attack this right-hand side against the likes of James Justin, and they had an absolute field day. They could see what we could do in. It was a long diagonal ball. They tried it a couple of times in the first half, but it didn't really work out. And that substitution helped, but every time it was like James Justin was trying his best and he was steaming through, and Garnacho, he did the same run again and again, and James Justin just couldn't keep up. He was just being left held out to dry. Towards the end, Deacon Reed dropped back a little bit, but it was really just every time Garnacho was in, and if he was a better striker, he would have, or better finisher, it could have been quite clear because they dragged us out of position, and him against Justin, there was no competition. And you say, well, Garnacho is a good player, and it's just the story of our season, and that was me. That decision and the fact that we didn't have another player coming on made a big difference. If I was Rude in that position, I would have taken Deacon over Reed off. I would have put in Koulibaly. I think I mentioned in the preview, because I think Koulibaly could be a versatile player. I think he could come in and play as a false. He could play in a inverted right back. He could play left wing. I think that would have really shored up the defense. But obviously, the thing we did, if we got Koulibaly on this side, he could have provided that cover for Justin. I don't think Justin is an out-and-out right back. I think he's better at doing this, bombing up and down the wing. But what actually happened is that Koulibaly came on instead of Thomas, and then we'll take that over. Then Thomas, so he came on the left back. Overall, I thought he formed a good partnership with the Coley. Didn't do anything wrong, didn't do anything amazing, but he was solid. And I think for the state of our shocking defence, that's all we can ask for. For the price that we paid for him, for the kind of player he is, having a solid player is better than what we've got because we've got some dribble, haven't we? Let's be honest. Koulibaly came on 66 minutes for Luke Thomas, which I was a bit surprised at because I thought Luke Thomas up to that point was one of our better performers. I think him, El Kanous, Okoli were our three better performers. And as you can see from this team, I mean, if we start to play, if we put Vardy up top, one thing that will keep us in the league is people talk about the spine. If we put in Vardy, El Kanous, Ndidi Samore, Okoli, and Hermansen, that's a pretty strong spine from start to finish. Wingers wise, have we really got people? No. We'll come on to Monger and Evans, and they didn't get a look in the past, but that's quite solid. I still think we get relegated because the teams that we've played and how we performed has been poor. Everton was ridiculous how awful that was. This was better, but we have to get consistent. The problem is we could perform like this and have an absolute stinker and get absolute steamrolled. I just don't believe in the consistency of this team at the moment. But coming into that, again, I think that could be Koulibaly coming into the left back. Didn't do anything wrong. I think he get Ahmad relatively quiet towards the end. He potentially started to tie because I thought Ahmad was getting a little bit more joy, but they were really sending people forward. Garnacho was having fun. They pushed a lot up with him as well, which meant that James Justin was even more isolated. We didn't really have an answer for it. Partly it's because we took Ndidi off. We put Winks on, and that just invited pressure. And another example as well, they took Patson Daka off, and I thought they were going to play Ayew as a false nine, but they brought on Buonanotte, and the fact that Patson Daka in the first half was running at was up there and running at defense, and we started to suffer under press, and he was dropping right back into midfield. I'm like, well, if we need to break, we need him to go out. We need him to be on the back, so we've got some way out of it. One player I've not mentioned so far, giving Jordan Ayew for 90 minutes. I don't know what's wrong with these managers, man. I thought under Steve Cooper because he was a poor manager, but Rude's not. But give Mavididi a run around because Ayew gets on the ball and he kind of runs over, kind of falls over, or he gets the ball, gets it, he slows down the play and just kind of gives it away. And he gives it. He's not a bad player. He's trying his best, bless him. But it's kind of like a fat guy on a treadmill. It's like he's trying, but he's not that great. That's how I feel about it. He's trying, but he's just not good enough. And if he's going to come on again, for me, he was a kind of player. When you're 1-0 up, when you're 60 minutes, that's when you start to bring on your Jordan Ayew. But we started him, and he's blowing, and he was really towards the end of the game. He needs to be substituted. I don't know why Mavididi's not getting any kind of minutes. And I know I've said before, I'm not sure if he's a Premier League player or is a starter, but for me, it was Jordan Ayew. He annoys me. He's annoyed not because he's not trying. He's obviously trying. He's just not good enough. He really isn't, and that's not me trying to be awful to him. He's doing his best. He's genuinely just doing his best. I don't know if you've all been at a job where you're trying your hardest to get it sorted, but there's just too much. And you're like, I can't do this. And I think that's what Jordan's trying to. And then Daka, I think, again, needs to go up front more. At times, I was noting when we're under the cosh, he's dropping right the back into midfield. And what this means is that A, he was substituted, and B, I thought I would go in the middle. It was like Buonanotte was in the middle. We all kind of fell apart, let's be honest, strike force-wise. I'm glad they kept El Kanous on, but then what that allowed us to do is Maguire to really step up and go, cool, I'm gonna play a push this team back. And we didn't really have an answer for that, which is why I still feel that this team is poor. Yes, we were missing some key players, but there is some hope, but there's not enough for me to get excited about and really go, okay, I'm gonna really look forward to the next one. Because against Arsenal, yes, Arsenal in a poor run of form. I think they absolutely batter us. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I really am. But I just don't see this team staying up. I really hope that we do. But are we in the same position? If we go and sell Nelkanu, if we go and sell Hermansen, and then we can't move on a lot of this squad. So yeah, it's really frustrating in my opinion. there were some good performances, but when Man United decided to turn up, and actually at second time, there's another thing I want to mention. Man United were wide open, even after Garnacho came on. There was a time when there was the back four, and then above there was Winks just on his own. And he had that even in the Championship last season, where Winks was a level above everybody else, he did not have that much room. There was like zero midfield. He had the space to come, take the ball 15, 20 yards, and then pick the pass that he wanted to. So Man United were awful. But then they started to build back into the game, and we didn't have an answer for it. And that, for me, is the frustrating thing, because Man United didn't go from 1 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. They went from 3 out of 10 to about 5. And that difference between 3 and 5, we didn't have any answers for. And that's why the title is Why the Offside Decision Didn't Matter. We can find ourselves a little bit unlucky. But what are we going to do with that? Because I'm fed up of going, if we keep playing like that, we'll stay up, because they'll just drop another clanger and it doesn't matter. So I know I'm frustrated. And another people that also are frustrated is I would have loved to have seen Monga and Evans, because a lot of the fan base, and including myself, were getting really excited because Monga's been linked to Real Madrid. He's been linked to a top 6 side. Man City are in for him. There's a lot of people sniffing around for this kid. And 15 years old, he would have been brilliant to see his performance. Now, if we were 2-0 up and at about 70 minutes, I would have given him that time, but we couldn't afford to. I'm still surprised Mavididi didn't get any minutes. And Evans, again, 15 years old, if you come on at Man United and you're just under the cosh, you're not really going to get the opportunity. But, and also because we're out of the cup now, are we going to see him? No. So it feels like all this gas in the media of, oh, he'll be good. And we didn't even see him for a substitute appearance. But I understand why. I'll be honest. I understand why. We were under the pressure. 1-1. He's not the kind of player that's going to, and it cost you the game. And I would have loved to see both of them, but I think we don't see him till now, to the end of the season, unless there's a couple of horrific injuries, because he scored some crackers, but the difference is going from an under 18s or under 21s all the way into the first team against a Man United Old Trafford is a lot. And we don't want to. We saw what happened with Luke Thomas, where we threw him in and go, you've just got to deal with this. And he swam for a bit, but let's be honest, in general, he's kind of sunk down. We don't want to delay his development as well. But at the same time, do we want him to go to another club? He will eventually, but at least let's see what he's made of a little bit. Who else do I want to mention? Substitutions. Again, we didn't really make too many of them, to be honest with you. Casey McAteer came off for Bobby for 34 minutes. Buonanotte came on for Daka, and I think that just, again, after that, the game started to ramp up in Man United's end. They started to get a belief behind them. Their goal was similar to ours, kind of scrappy, kind of fell in. And the offside was, again, not offside. But what can you do from that situation? But maybe that was a positive thing. I didn't want extra time for these players. I would rather get this game over and done with. I would rather them actually go and play, in my opinion, for the FA Cup, play the replays, actually help some of the lower teams down. But that's another thing in itself. Yeah, I think that there was a good performance a little bit, but I'm fed up of saying it's a good performance. We'll get him in the next one. We'll get him in the next one, because it never really happens. I'd love to be proven wrong, and I'd love for the teams to go, do you know what? We're going to show it in the next one, and we're going to build a run and start to build this. Now, do I trust Root? In the next game, let's be honest, do we want Vestergaard back in after that Coley performance? No. Do we want Winks back in after the performance? Because once we got Winks on, we had a little bit of 10 minutes of, okay, he was progressing the ball, and then he'd look poor after that. Alcanus, I'm glad, but Vardy gets back into the squad. Do we play Koulibaly in the next game? Deco over Reed deserves to start a place. I would potentially drop out on IU and put in Koulibaly. So we're playing like a bit of a back line. Potentially I'd play 3 in midfield, but we know that Rude wants to play a certain way. So yeah, that's why the title is, again, the offside doesn't matter. I'm glad we're out of the cup, because we can just concentrate on the league from now on. We're out of the EFL Cup. We just need to get on with it, really. And I'm hoping that that's something, but I don't have much hope. I still think we're 6% chance likely to get relegated this season, which I don't want to, but see how it goes. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll see you in the next one. So goodbye.